message on. I am certainly not the kind of, I can't exegete a passage of scripture like Phil can. I mean, we are just amazingly blessed to have someone of that caliber doing this for us every week. He's just phenomenal. So I'm going to do what artists do. I'm going to use pictures. But before that, I'm going to read a scripture passage from Colossians chapter 3, which I think will continue with our theme of bless. You know, first be in prayer for the people that we wish to see come to the Lord, then listen to them, then eat with them, then serve them, and then finally share our story. Chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. Right place in your glasses. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom, and as you sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs with gratitudes in your hearts to God. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. And then if we jump down to verse 23, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men. I like this verse because it said that we are letting Christ dwell in us richly when we're singing, or three things here: psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And that gives me confidence, so that, I mean, at least 3 parts of that are the arts. We can do good. But the context of that verse certainly applies to the work that we do every day. But if you notice in that blessed sequence, there are, before we share our story, which really doesn't end, it's ongoing. We're always writing another chapter to it, because that's our walk with the Lord. There are 5 categories of action that we're doing before we share the story. So, in a sense, our story, we are illustrating it every day to the people that we work with. And our actions and our attitudes towards people and how we deal with them probably speaks more to those who don't know the Lord than most of the other things that they've heard. In a sense, I mean, I have to kind of try to be Phil today, but in another sense, we all have to try to be Phil all week long, so nobody gets off the hook. He teaches us what the Lord wants us to know. We're the ones that have to put that into action. So I thought I would show you some wonderful pictures and things that I saw when I was in Europe that illustrate God to the world of ancient times, actually. This was the church before, I guess as you will see, from the very earliest times till these wonderful things. I'm starting here from my trip last year. This is the cathedral in Evreux. They're all the cathedrals in France are called Notre Dame, Our Lady, but they have, they're different. And just, it's a spectacular thing to see this. And when you see, I'm going to try to enlarge this, these things are so beautifully built. And these guys weren't doing this with they weren't cutting the stone with water jet lasers that were hooked to a computer to get accuracy. They were stretching a chalk line and snapping that and cutting it by hand, and they were measuring by the different parts of your hand. There's the cubit that we're always reading about in the Bible. There was a measurement thumb to pinky finger, another one from forefinger to pinky finger. And the guys that were working on this, if they were handing off to another guy, they'd compare. So they would see, okay, well, you're a little longer, so I'll move in a bit. Just unbelievable that these guys could do those things. They fit together so amazingly, and they built these structures that were so tall and so heavy. And I can't imagine getting that right without it all tumbling down. And then the beautiful carving that they would do on these things. Here's the interior of that same church. I had a little thing that I used to like to do. I would go into these cathedrals and I would go down to the part where they're built kind of like a cross. There's the long way that you come in, and then there's a short bar across there. So I would lay down, I'd look around, make sure the crowds were all right, and I would lay down on my back in that spot, and I would take these pictures, because it was amazing. When you walk in there, we don't know who these people that built this, we don't know their names. We know that maybe the bishop or whoever was the pope at the time. We know about that, but we don't know the name of the guy that actually made these things. And they were working as if for the Lord, I think, because when you do something that far up, you can't really see it. And they didn't have zoom lenses or anything like that, but they did it. What blew my mind was these gargoyle things. Every one of them was a little bit different, and they were carved with these fantastic faces, and they're about 6-7 stories at least above the ground. You almost really can't see them. And then you think, wait a minute, these are just gutters and downspouts. They put that much love and stuff into the, just was astounding to me. All these little things like that are so far off the ground that who can even see it? And yet, look how beautiful and the condition of that after these things were built in the 1200s before Protestantism. And I think my feeling is that for all the excesses that maybe the higher ups in the church went through, it was these people and the people coming to those churches every week for the services. They were the ones that their work lasted. They established families and taught the word of Christ to each other. Probably the priest who was in a particular church wasn't very high up. The hierarchy was quite a big thing. And their work is still speaking after all these centuries. One of the things that struck me when you're over there, I'd say at least 1/3 of the tourists are Asian or Indian, and probably where they come from, they don't get a lot of information or right information about Christianity. What they know about Christianity is coming and seeing these things and looking up at that, and I can't imagine you wouldn't have a sense of awe and think, well, golly, these people, something about that must be driving their heart, driving their imagination, that maybe we should think about that guy, We didn't go just to all cathedrals. This is a small church in a small town called Kwasi. And this portion here is the oldest part. It was a smaller church. The turret has been beaten up or destroyed, or a lot of wars go through Europe from time to time. And those churches are quite beautiful too. Here's the interior. There's no spiders in these churches, old as these buildings are. This is from like 1000. So, all the wood, the pews and the woodwork, is made of chestnut, and apparently spiders don't like it. So, there was a section. What we're looking at here is basically this, the podium, where the priest would speak from. Because this time it was Catholicism, there's no Protestantism yet. But they uncovered behind the walls all kinds of writings that, I guess it's maybe like that or something. Or we have, banners and things that we put up. They would have these things on there, so they very, very carefully got the paint off of it. And we also took some fun trips. Here's Monet's garden in Giverny, the famous lily pond, which there's that bridge. A little closer, the bridge from the other side. Very beautiful place. There's his home and gardens. And here is the small town church in Giverny, behind which he is buried. And it's probably about roughly the size of this one. And then, of course, you can't go to France without seeing Notre Dame, the famous. Of course, the spire was not up then. They were getting ready to put it on. They finished it apparently for the Olympics. But I had fun. I took this shot from the next bridge over, and I painted it. And that was a day, because I had to have my easel leg over the railing of the thing and pressed up against it like that, because I had bicycle traffic behind me, and then there was other car traffic, and you just had to be careful. You couldn't back up like you normally would. We also took a boat ride in the evening, so I could see it at night, and they're just so impressive. The other famous church in Paris is Sacré-Cœur, meaning Sacred Heart. And probably anytime you see a movie about Paris, there'll be a shot in here with this. And you go up to the hill, the top of the hill in Montmartre, and here's a close-up of it. A beautiful, beautiful, again, structure that so well made and so inspiring. Unfortunately, I got up there very early in the morning, so it wasn't open yet. So I did manage to get some shots from just below it where the flowers were. And it shows from anywhere you go in Paris, you can pretty much spot it because it's way up on a hill. All these places are on 7 hills. Paris is on 7 hills, Rome is on 7 hills, Moscow's on 7 hills, Atoma's on 7 hills. There must have been something like that. Good. So, one of the other people who were with us got this shot of the interior and shared it with me. But as you can see, my goodness, it's quite a... And, people who... a lot of Islamic nations, people wind up in France. So they're seeing all this too, and has to drive your imagination somewhat, I would think. But at least it speaks to people who are working for their God, their honor trip this year to Rome. This is a nighttime view of the Vatican. This is from the bridge by the hotel we were staying at. They have lovely little bridges everywhere. And here's a Pope's eye view of the Vatican, what he would see, or if you came out the front door. It's a big, open, like plaza with these buildings that go around. Sadly, most of them, like over here, it's gift shops. But that's where people gather when he speaks. And up along the top here these are supposedly represent various saints and prophets and the apostles and just actual figures from the Bible. When you get in there, it's pretty much all human beings inside the building. This is a not too fancy place. This is where the Pope, or the current Pope, comes out and speaks from. And this window here is the one that he always comes out of and does his address. He doesn't go to the fancy spot. He likes it simple. And that little thing there is a shade for him. It's pretty high. So, and there's looking back at it. Normally you would expect the Pope, most of them would speak from here. I think that's where they bring them out to announce that they've been chosen Pope or whatever. Interesting that so many Egyptian obelisks were incorporated into Christian architecture. Here's the interior of the dome. You can see there's a lot of people in there. It's a lot of gilt and stuff like that. This thing in the middle, which is sort of covered up with scaffolding and stuff, is the very, very fancy wood-carved thing that's over St. Peter's tomb. I'm always like amused that Jesus asked the disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" And Peter said, "You're the Christ." And that's when he changed his name from Simon to Peter, meaning the rock. And he said, "Upon this rock I will build my church." Well, they got his bones and they put him in a hole and they literally built a church on top of it. So, I thought that was that tickles me. But the funny thing is that some of the churches, the big ones like this, didn't really feel like sanctuaries. I think it's just because there's so much traffic in them on a day-to-day basis. And they're so fancy. And for the most part, they were built to be the private parts of them, the private chapels of the guys in charge, not, regular folks. All this amazing marble but in there they have this incredible statue by Michelangelo of Mary taking his body down from the cross and holding him. And it's just, you have to be amazed that you can take a chunk of rock. I mean, there's, doing something as if for the Lord. It can make it look like flesh that is limp, and then flesh that is holding things, the muscles, and it looks like cloth, and it looks like, it's just an astounding thing. I couldn't get as close as I wanted because they keep it behind a clear barrier, because I think one time it went on tour and somebody vandalized it. So since then they have to keep it relatively safe. But all over the rest of the building, there's big statues of this Pope. Look at that marble. That's insane. But somebody Somebody cared about making it beautiful. Another pope. Gold, all this up here is gold. Quite the thing. This is on the way to the Sistine Chapel. You're not allowed to take pictures in there. And once I got in there, I realized that I was the only guy who wasn't doing this. So I kind of wished I had. Because they crowd you in there and you look up at the ceiling and you see all the pictures, and it's astounding. And then on the end wall, back this wall is the white throne judgment, with the one, you probably see the picture all the time. Well, first Adam creating Eve and then going down to the white throne judgment. But it was still, I mean, quite an astounding thing. Here's looking straight up from one of those hallways. Funny thing, when we got into the Sistine Chapel, there's a guy from Atomo. Who knew? But somebody got up there and painted all this stuff or gilded all that stuff, and somebody designed that, and it's just. This was a painting from inside that I'm not sure. I think this is supposed to be the Ascension, but there's other things going on here that don't seem to relate to that. Some of the facial expressions on Jesus in some of these paintings was a little bit amusing, but I was particularly looking for Ascension pictures when I would go to the different cathedrals. This is St. Ignazio Loyola, his church in another part of Rome. And you can see some of these local. It's amazing how many churches they have and how close together they are. I mean, it's literally like 3 or 4 blocks apart. You have one fancy cathedral after another. And it's almost overwhelming. I think they were clearly trying to compete with the Sistine Chapel here, but a lot of the paintings, when you find out what they are, they're not about, like in the Vatican, it's not about the story of Adam and Eve and the creation, it's not about the crucifixion and the resurrection. It's the guy who built the church, or and him being accepted into heaven because he was put the money up for it. Just unbelievable. There might be, down at the bottom, there'll be like a Moses or somebody who's biblically important. Again, here's this marble. I have no idea what that is, and somebody carved that. And how did they get it smooth without sandpaper? Of course, you have to go to the Colosseum and the ancient portion of Rome, the Roman Forum. And I found out, we always think of Christians being sacrificed to lions and things like that. The guy that took us through there said that no, they didn't do that there, that Christians were killed outside the city limits because they weren't considered worthy enough to be taken in here and killed like a common criminal. Somebody who had broken the law. Interesting kind of laws. And also I found out that the gladiators didn't kill each other. We've always seen that thing where they thumbs up or thumbs down and they kill the guy. That was from a painting that came a lot later. These gladiators, you had to buy them. It was like almost, and they were expensive because they were athletes, and it's pretty much like an NFL or an NBA athlete. You don't kill these So they would take a guy who had been caught embezzling or something like that, and they'd put him out there and let an animal have at him. But different times, different attitudes, or whatever. So here is, just outside the Colosseum, is the triumphal arch of Titus, which just before the verses we read in Matthew, Jesus was talking with the disciples about when they're going by the temple in Jerusalem, and they're saying, "Wow, isn't it great?" And he's saying, "I tell you the truth, not one stone will be left upon another. It's going to come tumbling down," which must have seemed very shocking to him. And it did happen in 70 AD. There was a revolt, and the Romans came to suppress it. And basically after that, a lot of the Jewish people spread out of Israel to other parts of the world. But this is the arch for his triumphal return. Here is the portion that shows the Romans carrying off the articles from inside the temple, a menorah and certain other things. And this, to me, was kind of one of the most interesting areas in Rome. Here's one of the 7 hills is called the Palatine Hill. That's where all the quality folk live. So you go up there and you can get out on these verandas and plazas and stuff, and you can take a big view of the very, very ancient parts of Rome. This is what was the Forum. I'd like to call your attention to a little spot down here. That. When Phil gets back, he's going to start a series on Philippians, which Paul wrote from his imprisonment in Rome when he was there. This is where he was first jailed when they brought him to Rome. And then he went into somewhere else, they don't know where, to house arrest, and he wrote Philippians. And then they brought him back here again and carted him over here, and this is where he was pronounced a death sentence. And then he was taken out of town and killed. But to give you an idea of the size of this, if you go to the bottom of the stairs there, and over to the left, there's a little cubby hole. It's about that size. I can't imagine him being caught, held in there. What, just, and you walk by this and you think, wow, Paul was in there. It's astounding. This, we're looking at the Roman Forum here. You've always heard the thing about Julius Caesar being stabbed by all the other senators in the Roman Forum. He didn't get stabbed there. This is the place where he got stabbed, somewhere around here. And now it's a cat sanctuary. And they have signs outside everywhere that don't feed the cats because we're already feeding them. And they just lounge all over the place. From Rome, we went to Sorrento, and this is down by the Bay of Naples. That's Vesuvius in the background there, and all those little white things, that's the city of Naples, and they're very happy to live underneath that thing. I don't know. The whole Mediterranean area was beautiful. There was a wonderful restaurant over here. I got some good fish in that one. And then we took a drive along the Amalfi Coast Road, which is, it's just barely wide enough for 2 vehicles. And they have motorcycles and scooters going down between them. You can see here, we're right up against the guardrail. I had to take this through the window of the van because there's no place to stop and get out and take a picture. But you can see it's sheer walls on one side and a sheer drop on the other. And whereas you might have been scared driving with that. We had a really good driver the week before he was driving us. Justice Alito was visiting there, vacationing or something, and he drove the justice and his security team around. So I felt reasonably safe. One of the funny things about Italy, or countries that are Catholic, is they seem to have Mary sightings everywhere. This is a natural rock formation with a tree. They call it the Madonna Fiore, or Madonna Fiore, which also means flowers. And they built a little place you can go out here and walk over there and see it. And from a distance, it really does look like. When we went to Capri, there was a cave. I couldn't get a good picture of it because it was low illumination. We took a boat around the island. And there was a cavern, and there was a stalactite, the ones that come out of the ground, and like that. And I'm amused that in primarily Protestant nations, we have Jesus sightings. They have Mary sightings. You know, somebody burns a piece of toast and it looks like Jesus, you know. So I guess we're kind of conditioned for whatever we look. It's there, you just need to look for it or something, I don't know. There were churches there too that were, this was in, I believe, Priano. These gorgeous little, it looked more Spanish, or maybe as you get further east, maybe the Eastern European influence. It looks like there's a swimming pool there. That's just because I had to use a long lens. It's actually on another building. Either that or they got a serious baptism routine going. There's another, you can see how close we were to there. But there's this beautiful tile work on this one. I just thought was amazing. And this is Positano. We went down, stopped, and we went down to the beach, and I painted there, and it's lovely to put your feet in it. The beach is stone, it's not sand, it's rocks, and it takes you 2 minutes to walk 30 feet because you just keep sinking into the rock. But it feels good. That cloudy spot in the middle there, that's the last of Cindy's ashes that I put in there. It's her, on her mom's side, they were from Sicily, so I thought, in my imagination, it's going to swim to Sicily. And then we went to Florence, and this is the Duomo. This is actually the view from the dining room at the hotel. And we had great hotels. We were really lucky. And I don't know, you can see there some balloon rides, you can get views of the, but these are, amazing thing about it, again, incredible work, but these were the Quality Folks Church, wasn't the little one that's down the street that everybody went to. It's called, it's actually not even a cathedral, it's a baptistry. So the cathedral is the one with the dome. They would take them across the street to get them baptized in this amazing, fancy place. There are at least there are a few more pictures of Jesus gets into the thing a little bit more in some of these. These are the doors on the east side of it. They do each, they're bronze and they're, at least that tall, floor to ceiling. And they're then gilded over the bronze. And each of these panels is an event from the Old Testament. Although all the people are dressed like Renaissance era Italians, And the buildings look like Renaissance era Italian. And there's Michelangelo's, not by him, by somebody else. They had a series of statues carved of famous Italians. And there's the David, another fantastic statue that wouldn't fit in here. The head is probably the size of all that. But again, the look on his face, the posture, you can feel the way he stands. The one leg, there's tension in the thigh, and the other leg is loose. And somehow he was able to carve a piece of rock and make it look like that. It's just crazy amazing. So you can see it's pretty much how large it is. And then we went to Siena. This is the famous piazza where they have a horse race around there once a year. Italy was once a group of competing city-states, and they tried to find ways to not war with each other, so they would have horse races and contests, things like that. This was the cathedral in Siena. Again, huge, enormous doors. You can see how tall these things are compared to human beings. And this one was astounding to me. Somebody got up there, and first they gold leafed all that, and then they painted those things. It's just, and the detail up here. I mean, my gosh. I mean, when you're down here, you can't see it. Only God can see the bits on the top. So it's as if working for the Lord. There were some very, very old paintings in there. They would have been altar pieces that would have been set on an altar. These are probably from 1300 or something. And then a very fancy insides. Again, up at the top, there's the heads of all the, we've had a lot of pastors here. Imagine if we had to get somebody to chisel a portrait and stick them all up there. I think we need to get Phil one of these. This is what they used instead of these back in the day. They had to get the guy up high so he could yell. And but in this one, it was black and white marble. And I was amazed at how in the world they could get enough marble, which is a natural material, to match it so that all the blacks are equally black and all the whites are equally white. And at first you think they're painted, and then you get up and you look at them, and they no, man, that's a piece of stone. It's crazy. So, and the tile floors they have are just unbelievable. And you can see this guy. I mean, you can't help but look up. And again, I think this has got something to do with coming out of Egypt, the Israelites, and because they would mix so much contemporary stuff in with the ancient Bible story, it was a little hard to tell what's going on in some of these paintings. So I think that's supposed to be Moses. And, or maybe the guy in the middle might be Aaron. This is a little town called San Gimignano. Beautiful little hillside town, olive trees in the front. And then you could go up into the town and take a view out into the Tuscan countryside. It's all the vineyards and olive groves, and it was just amazing. Then we went to Venice, which maybe was my favorite, if I had to pick a favorite. This is St. Mark's Square. And this is the Church of St. Mark's, and the bell tower, which they would call people to church. They don't do services in these churches. There's another view of it with the astounding work. You can see how many people are here. I mean, here's some Indian or Asian people. It's very crowded there. You have to get there about 5:30 in the morning if you want to see the place sort of emptied out. So here's goes back more. There's two halves to the Roman Empire. The western half, which is more where Rome and all those places are, and then there's the eastern half, which sort of starts around Venice and that area. And the style of architecture and the style of the paintings and the mosaics was a little bit different and very interesting. It's more like the Eastern Orthodox churches kind of thing. Romanesque, which is very interesting because our church, the sanctuary is Romanesque, and the part out front where we come in, where the bell tower is sort of the Americanized version of what was the Gothic cathedrals, what you could do in wood. And then we've got a Spanish mission style facade on the front, so we're covered. Wonderful paintings of the saints. Here it is late in the day when the light captures the top of it, and just beautiful. Starting to fade out, but as you can see, these are probably folks that come from countries that are not normally Christian countries. So it's has to make some kind of impression. Right across the way here is the Church of St. George, San Giorgio, and its own bell tower. And like I say, the churches are like a stone's throw apart, although most of them don't. And then on the other corner is Santa Maria della Salute. This is the Church of Mary. Something to do with health. I think maybe it was almost like for cripples or people who were suffering from leprosy or some sort of thing. Out in the water, there was, here at the same place, there were a lot of, out in the lagoon of Venice, there were these structures that were hospitals where they would quarantine these people when they would get these diseases and stuff. And it would all be nuns and whatever caring for them. So a lot of unnamed Mother Teresas. So, and of course, we took a gondola ride. You have to do that, and that was fun. So I threw this one in for fun. This is Casanova's house. It's where he entertained. This was a little town called Burano, where they specialize in lace making and a cookie, which I didn't think was all that great, but they paint the buildings all these amazing colors, and just really fun place to see. I wonder if you have to get a permit to choose your color or whatever. But then back to France, my most recent trip. This is Mont Saint-Michel, and this is the view from the building that I was staying in. There was a field out there. Felt right at home. They had, as you'll see later, they had John Deere balers. This place is very fascinating. It was built on this rock formation, and you think, how did they get all that stuff out there? Because it's water. There's a tide comes in and it goes out, and it goes in and it comes out. At one time, it was land when they built the place, and there was some catastrophic event that caused it to
flood, and they don't know exactly what, but they think it had to do with the earthquake, the Lisbon earthquake in 17 something. And it was like a slapback tsunami that like hit the English coast and came back here. Here's a picture that you can see when the tide's out, you can get out and walk around there. We did. Goes up and up and up and up and up. And there's like a little town below that's sort of a support for the monastery, because it was a monastery, not really a church. They would have churches in small surrounding towns. On the top is a spire with the statue of the Archangel Michael, hence the Mont Saint-Michel, or Mount Saint Michael. And here's a reproduction, life-size reproduction of the statue. It's slightly larger. He may be about 7 feet tall. And slaying the dragon. There it is with the tide slightly in. And we walked around in it, and there's this amazing mud, and it's about the equivalent of $75 for a little less than a cup that you can get at spas to put on your face or whatever. Apparently because for some reason it doesn't smell fishy. You would think it would have a fishy odor or whatever, but it doesn't. So they collect it and they sell it to spas, and people put it on their face. My feet felt good afterwards. But it was. Then you can walk up. There's like walkways that go all the way towards the top. So here I stopped at one place, and you can look down here and see the cars and people. And way back here in the background is the plain of the bay. This is the Abbey. I'm almost up to the top, which would be over here. And there's again the statue of Saint Michael, the Archangel. This is a view north towards the English Channel, and you can kind of see it's up there. And then this is fun. I hope you can see this. We were there the day after the June 6th commemoration in Normandy. This is June 7th, and they flew over in vintage C-47s, and guys, American airborne troops, put on vintage uniforms and equipment and stuff like that, and they jumped. And initially we were told that they didn't do, this is on the other side of the peninsula where they actually did jump. And at first we were told that it was because it was too crowded over there for them to jump. It's built up since 1944. But we found out later that it's because the president and all the other dignitaries from European countries were there on the other side. So the airspace was restricted and you couldn't do anything. But it was kind of fun to watch these. And I just had to be walking along and, whoa! Got a video. And then they land down here. We were staying in a town back that way. I don't know if you can see, there's some sheep running, the little light things. When the tide goes out, there's a bit of a salt marsh there, and they let sheep and cattle graze, white Angus and sheep. And I'm told that supposedly the meat has a walnut flavor. So their restaurants want them. I can't imagine these guys doing that in the middle of the night, not knowing what they're going to land on. these smaller towns felt more sanctuary-like when you went inside because they have regular services. And this one had, they don't use much in the way of electrical light. This was just natural light that would hit these places and illuminate certain parts of the sanctuary during certain parts of the day. This is, they have an electric light on their statue of Mary for drama. This was a little town called Dol de Bretagne, where there was a cathedral that, one of the really, really old ones, that was initially a Romanesque style building, and then they built a Gothic style building on top of it, without interrupting services. They've had continuous services there forever, and they're still rebuilding. What you're looking at here in the foreground is a device that they would use they would walk on that wheel and they would lift stones. Here's one of the older arches, Romanesque. Oops. This is an aerial view of what it might look like when it's done. The town is, here it is from a view where you can see the construction. The town is about the size of Keosauqua, and the restoration is being funded by an English author named Ken Follett, who wrote the Pillars of the Earth series. They made a TV series out of it too. And out of his own money, he's paying for the restoration because obviously it's very expensive. Here's the old part of it, the baptistry where they would baptize infants. There's the interior. If you think the pews are not comfortable, look at those things. Again, another one of these podiums so that they could hear their pastor. Somebody carved that. It just astounding to me. How long did that take? There's a view from behind the altar looking down to amazing stained glass windows that, again, the natural illumination through some part of the ceiling would strike a certain part of the sanctuary and illuminate a statue or illuminate the altar or whatever. Work that out. And I felt right at home. That was just maybe 2 blocks away from where we were staying in France there. And back here is the part of the bay that surrounds Mont Saint-Michel. So, I hope you enjoyed that. Like I say, I can't take a verse and unfold it like Phil can, but I think that these artisans and these people that worked on these cathedrals and stuff had to have been working as if for the Lord, because it has witnessed for centuries to many, many generations. And the one last thing I'd like to say is the Matthew 25 verse about when you did it for the least of these, you did it for me, Christ says to these disciples. I wanted to play with the idea of who are the least in our mind. You know, certainly it talks about people who are sick or in need of something. But least might also apply to the people that we think the least of, people we disagree with, people who might just chap our hides a bit, or whatever. So when we deal with them, I try to remind myself, okay, this person's kind of hard to deal with. I may not agree with them or whatever, but I am dealing with them as if I'm dealing with our Lord and treat them like that. So that's the idea I'd like to go out on, and I think it's supportable. I mean, the whole idea of the parable of the Good Samaritan, they thought very, very little of the Samaritans, the Jews. And yet, Jesus illustrates that idea of who is your neighbor with someone who you might think the least of. So, there it is, the greatest commandment. And I suppose our minor version of that is we have to go out and be Phil all week long. So until we can get back to Phil, thank you for putting up with me. So